There's a long one. Nothing but net. Oh, my goodness. Didn't see that coming. I'm diddly dee.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome to another episode of All Nat, brought to you by OTS. I am your host, Natalie, but most people call me Nat, and today is going to be so exciting. I have the men behind the official Golden State Warriors subreddit account on Twitter. And if you follow them, first of all, I don't understand how you can be a Golden State Warriors fan and not be following that account, but they have so much information. I learned so much from them, and they blessed me with being on the show today. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me. First, I don't know who wants to talk first, but I have with me Meds and Perks. So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us in. Excited to chat hoops.
Yes, definitely. All right. So we're recording it Sunday night. Some good games coming up this week, but some news just dropped about Andrew Wiggins going into protocol. So that's now the second Golden State Warrior to go into health and safety protocols. Two of our three leading scorers now on the team, and one of our key defensive guys. So lots to break down. We're going to talk about a lot this week, a lot regarding all the games this week. So we have the Kings, who also have several players in health and safety protocols. And then we're also going to be talking about the Grizzlies, who, I don't know, do they have any players in protocols? Do you guys know?
Check right now.
Okay.
That's a good question.
So
Of note, though, the Kings just dispatched the Spurs.
Did they?
Who took down the Dubs. Yeah, they beat them 121 to 114.
Yeah, with their, because they had to call a bunch of G League guys up, right? Like, is Fox back yet?
He is not. He did not play.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, they don't have that many guys. I don't even know why that game is still continuing.
You could say that about a lot of games in the NBA right now.
Yeah, but
I
they canceled all the Nets games today. And well, not all, but you get what I'm saying. So they canceled the Hawks game. They canceled a number of games today, and they even canceled a game that was set for Tuesday. So I'm like, why can't this Kings game get canceled?
Yeah, the Kings have 6 players in health and safety protocols. That's what I see in the latest injury report. So
Okay. So yeah, so we have the Kings up next. Who's out? Because that'll help us know like who's gonna even be playing. I don't know if anyone gets back by tomorrow.
So in health and safety protocols, it's Fox, Terrence Davis, Marvin Bagley, Alex Len, Davion Mitchell, and then Raquan Holmes has the right eye injury. So I think they have 7 guys total.
So really 2 key guys, Davion and Fox, right? So I mean, what do you guys expect that to look like now? It's going to be no Andrew, no Poole. So you're going to have Steph and Dre. Who do you think will get the starting spot in place of Poole? I know last game Kerr went with Moody. I don't know if he's going to try that experiment again. Lee hasn't been playing that well, but we will be back at home. So maybe, I'm not sure. So yeah, let's start with that. Who do you guys think will get the starting spot?
That's a good question. I was rapping on Twitter with Marcus Thompson about starting lineups for this last game.
Yeah, look
And
at
I
you
think
just flexing.
The big balance is finding like when you're playing the rooks, like you can't play too many of them at one time. So like it made sense, I think, for Moody to get the nod in Poole's absence. But given that Poole and Wiggins are out, I think that Jana brings more to the table than Moody does. So I'm expecting to see like a lineup that would probably be Steph, Lee, Kuminga, Draymond, and Looney. That's what I expect to see. But
So I was going to ask about Kuminga because he's been great. And
Perks, what do you think?
I mean, my only thing is that enough spacing? Like you essentially have 3 guys really gonna shoot the three ball that well. Like yeah, like Kuminga knocked down a couple, and like he
He's
has
been
that a
making it
little
rain,
bit.
bro.
I mean, yes,
But they're
but
not
like
they're
he's
not
not
gonna
a
win that
3-point threat.
game with
Yeah.
who else are you gonna put in? I mean, Otto for one of them.
I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if they want auto playing big minutes.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like who else? Like the only other shooters on the team are Otto and Bielitsa.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like with Wiggins and Poole both out, maybe they just do Lee and Moody because like that's. I mean, I know both of them haven't been playing that well offensively and hitting their shots, but like that's your 3 and D guy. Well, I mean, Lee's all right defensively, but that's basically like the two shooting wings you have that you can put out there. That's not like Porter, who's he has limited minutes for a reason because of health.
I like Lee and Kuminga. I don't think I love Moody, but
Yeah, I mean, I
interesting.
can see that too.
Like watching,
I like.
because we've watched a little bit of both of these guys playing G League ball too, and like I would say, like Kuminga came out the gates like running full speed, like he's coming downhill, he's making offense happen, and Moody looked a little more sluggish initially, and he actually had me kind of questioning like, what is it that like why were we talking like this guy was so NBA ready? And then he kind of like turned the corner the next game out and dropped like 30 points or something like that. I was like, oh shit, okay. Like he can get it going for sure. I don't think either of them is a bad option. Like they can both hoop, like for sure they can.
I mean, they're both gonna see reps in this game regardless down, right? These players. So
yeah, for sure.
Chioza's gonna see minutes. Are we gonna see Evil Steph?
Evil Steph.
Is that how I pronounce his name? Chioza, is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
I want to say so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I've been calling him.
Yeah, I don't love him out there, but I mean, we don't really have much of a choice, I suppose.
I mean, I feel like he's fine for what he is. Like he's a good passer. He'll get in, he'll dribble, penetrate, driving kick. He'll make things happen, but obviously he leaves some room to be desired in other areas, especially defensively. I wouldn't mind if GP2 played a little bit more. I was actually thinking about the fact that
definitely
I feel like they use Payton a bit too much as an off guard. Like I know he's not a traditional point guard, but for I think anyone who watched his games in the summer league, like you can put the ball in his hands and he can make some plays. Like he's not a bad passer. He can drive and kick as well. So I wouldn't mind seeing him get a bit more on ball reps as opposed to like giving Chiosa more minutes than him. Which I mean, GB2 does so much things better in other areas, defensively, cutting, being a vertical spacer. Like take advantage of that and like use him a little bit more than Chiosa, I would say, even in Pool's absence.
Shouldn't Steph be a little bit more on ball in this kind of game?
Yeah. I mean,
will Kerr do that?
Yeah, I mean that's the question.
That's a good question.
I did recently post some stats where like for points per possession, Steph's been doing really well in isolation, but he's been doing a little bit less. Marcus Thompson actually made that point that Looney has had more field goals attempted through cutting than Steph has through isolation, which is probably an area they can improve on moving forward offensively.
Right. What's going on with, I know I'm a little all over the place, but we're talking about Steph and we're talking about him in isolation, but I'm just wondering what's going on with his finishing around the rim and just like his 2-pointers in general, like
missing layups.
I'm seeing wild tape.
Funnies.
Someone's like, oh, when are we going to talk about the fact that he doesn't have any lift? And I'm like, I'm not seeing that. I'm just seeing him miss right at the rim. He's getting up there. So, I mean, his touch is a little off. I don't expect it to like last throughout the whole season, but is there anything that you're seeing or noticing why you think it's happening or?
I don't think so. I think it's just like a couple bits of bad luck all pieced together. Like I think that even if you watch his body language, like there was a notable missed layup, like he created space and went up with his left hand and just like blatantly missed, like undefended. And he kind of stopped and like looked at his hand, like what the hell? Like what happened there? And it's like, I think if there was something to it, if he had an injury that he was masking or something like that, he wouldn't look so surprised or like disappointed when he missed that shot. So just like reading between the lines, some of that body language makes me feel like it's just bad luck. And statistically, he's going to continue to be who he is. It's like that's not something that's on my radar that I'm really worried about moving
Right.
forward.
I certainly didn't think it was injury, but I was just wondering if you give any credence to people who think like it's the beginning of his decline and you know.
I mean, he's
He's
coming off
lost.
his best season, right? Like last year. Like
One thing I did see, like discussion wise among fans, is that I haven't looked at the numbers, but that Steph hasn't really been taking advantage of the mid-range game as much.
Yes.
So like when defenders, get him off the 3-point line, more often than not, he's going to the rim, right? So they kind of are anticipating, okay, Steph's trying to go for a layup. Let me see if I can get a piece on that or like make it tough on him. So maybe there is room for him to, maybe pull up a bit more and take advantage of the mid-range. See if defenses kind of, soften up.
yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I definitely agree with that. So, I mean, what are we looking at here? Because the last game, the Kings games, they're another matchup to me like the Celtics. Like those games are always good. Like they're always close. They're always good. Now, I don't know if Davion Mitchell's going to be back. So he definitely won't be there hounding Steph. But what do you expect that matchup now to look like with so many of their players out? And who even knows yet? We won't know if we have all our guys. There could be more announcements tomorrow.
Totally different.
I mean, assuming right now the information we have, that's all we can talk about. So what are you expecting?
I was just pulling up before we hop on that, like trying to look at the head-to-head matchups that the Kings and the Warriors have had like recently. And it's kind of a mix. Like on October 24, it's like Warriors won by 12 points, 119 to 107. But the Kings torched us at the end of last year, 141 to 119. It's kind of interesting.
Who is their leading scorer right now? Is it Halliburton? Is it Barnes?
Yeah, I got that up. Let me see. It's De'Aaron Fox is averaging 21 points a game.
Right, but I mean with him out, like
Barnes is making 17.6 points a game.
Okay.
Yeah, he's playing 33 minutes a game.
And
Warriors legend. Barnes. I'll take credit for that.
I'm curious because I'm sure you guys saw the early discussions about Andrew Wiggins. No one's really requesting that he be traded anymore, but Barnes was a name that came up a lot. People were like, you get Harrison Barnes back and blah, 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 blah. But just in terms of like fit on this squad and knowing what Barnes looked like before on the team and now, who do you think is the better fit? Like in theory, if they were able to get Barnes, who do you guys think is the better fit? Harrison Barnes or Andrew Wiggins?
I feel like it's hard to say without knowing what Clay looks like. Because like I consider a Wiggins to be like a 2-3, like a shooting out smart forward, whereas Barnes is like a 3-4. So I feel like in the depth lineup, he kind of fills that power forward spot next to Draymond. Whereas I mean, you can play Wiggins as a 4, but like he's more naturally a 3.
Right.
So like I guess it kind of depends what the rest of the depth lineup looks like next to them. Like if you have Steph, Poole, Clay being Clay, and then maybe HB slides a little bit better at that 4 spot next to Draymond and Wiggins.
You think Poole is going to be out there for the top lineup?
In closing lineups? I mean...
Sometimes, but that's going to be a small lineup.
It depends. I mean, he's their second, like, most dynamic creator right now. So I feel like you kind of have to have him out there, especially, like, if you're in, like, the clutches of a game and you need buckets. Like, you can't just have Steph trying to, like, create stuff. Like, you need someone out there as a valve.
Agreed. But Curve favors defense, right? Sure. And so... Sure.
I mean, if they have the lead in situations like they're up 2 or 3, then I could see like GB2 in there for defense because like he's gonna shut down whoever like he's guarding. But I mean, if they're like chasing it, I feel like, and if Poole's like having a good game, like they kind of yo-yo Poole depending on how he's looking. But if he's having a good game, he should definitely be out there.
I was thinking Otto might be out there sometime.
Yeah, I mean, Otto definitely. We've already seen some closing lineups with Otto out there playing kind of as like the 4-5, I guess. I don't know.
I was thinking he'd be the 4 and Dre would be the 5, and then slide Wiggins over to the 3 and have Clay at 2.
Yeah, I mean that's also I think something we've seen them do and can definitely work, especially like when Poole kind of has like nights where like he's hitting it, or it's like no, just pull him early. And I mean, I love him, but he's still he's still trying to find like that consistency in his game.
I think honestly that when Clay comes back and he's consistently like coming off the bench, I think you probably will see him be a little bit more consistent, because it looks like when Steph isn't out there and he gets to like kind of just be out there alone, he looks a little bit more comfortable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think like when Poole's running the second unit, he's like running it like he's the one who's kind of like initiating and creating. And I think for him, he plays the best when it's like a balance of him making plays for others and for himself. And when he's in with the starters, it's like Draymond handles the ball, Steph handles the ball, like Poole handles a little bit, but he's not like the primary like creator as much. And I think that's why sometimes he leans too much towards shooting. And if he's not making them, then like he kind of gets stuck in like a poor rhythm. So yeah, I would agree that I think when Clay gets back and Poole goes back in the second unit, that we should see a little bit more consistency in that area from him.
We're gonna see Wiseman coming back and playing in that second unit with Poole.
I mean, I feel like it's tough to say because we don't even know when Wiseman's going to come back. Like, I mean, Kerr kind of said recently, well, he didn't explicitly say it, but the messaging has been we're not seeing him until 2022.
Right.
So I mean, we're gonna have Clay's going to come back first, and then that's obviously going to be a huge thing, and we'll be talking about that for a while, and then we'll see what happens with Wiseman. I would expect that he comes into like some sort of like 10-15 minute role in the second unit. Like obviously they're going to ramp it up as he comes back, but I would expect him to get some rotation minutes just off the bat, and then based on that, kind of it'll like slide up and down like with how he's performing. Would be my expectation.
Do you think he'll start in Santa Cruz before he comes straight up?
I would not expect him to play a game in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens, but I mean, we'll see. He is open to it. I mean, when they asked him about it, he said he would be, but that I wouldn't expect that to happen.
I don't have like no, there's no insider information that I have, but just my gut is telling me that we're not going to see James Wiseman play in the NBA until early March. That's my guess.
Really? Why?
That puts him at like so for his type of injury, for the meniscus repair, it's usually like a 7 to 9 month time frame.
Right. So wouldn't 9 months be January?
I think that 9 months would probably put him right about the beginning of February, end of January, beginning of February. And then I think that it'll be a matter of conditioning, getting him up to game speed. It's a tricky situation as far as like rehab and getting your conditioning back up. So with an injury like that, like structurally, he may be normal or returns to normal, but you need to get him ramped back up so that he is using proper body mechanics at the full amount of minutes that you want him to be playing at. Otherwise he will be like subconsciously tempted to perform in a way that he's used to and put stress on surrounding structures, which would like precede like knee inflammation or swelling to the surrounding areas, the soft tissue injuries. So I think that it'll be important for them to see, hey, we got to get him back up to a place where he can comfortably play 25, 35 minutes without like pushing himself to do stuff that he probably shouldn't be doing. And especially if they're winning, I don't think that there's any reason to kind of mess with that. But if you wait too long on the back end, once things are structurally sound, lazy is not the right term, but like you start losing your conditioning, you get further away from where you need to be. So that's why I was thinking that Santa Cruz might be an option, but I don't know. I might just be way off base with that.
I forgot that we have someone who has a medical acumen here. So
yeah, I do work in the hospital. I am a nurse, but I spent time talking with Dr. Narav Prandia, who's really active on Twitter too.
Yes.
And he took some time. It was really generous of him to help me understand more about these orthopedic injuries. So
okay.
So
Warriors fans should not be alarmed because this is like a typical time frame. Like it's
for sure.
Because I think everyone started getting scared when like they heard like, oh, it's later for Wiseman or no timetable for return, and they're just like, and I know everyone's just anxious, but it does seem that he's just following the normal timeline.
For sure. So what's really tricky about that, and this was new learning for me, which I thought was really interesting, is sort of like with a meniscus injury, there is no like the evaluation of readiness to return to play is heavily dependent on how a player feels, how an athlete feels. So there's no like CT or MRI that you can perform that you will look in the knee and be like, hey, look, that structure is solid and back to normal, because there has been like inflammation and changes to that area that will forever look deviated from the normal. So even once it's healed, you can't look back in and be like, oh, hey, look, like it looks like a pre-injury MRI at this point. That doesn't exist. So it's really dependent on the time frame that we know it takes for players to heal, and then how they feel as they recover. So like Wiseman could start playing at 7 months, and he might be ready, like his knee might be ready to do that. But if he did play at 7 months and was not ready, like him knowing that that was the case would be like he might get swelling there or tenderness in the surrounding structures, and that would create a setback. So
Okay.
it's a situation where I would guess, and this is all guessing because we don't know his physicians, or it's been so silent about what's going on with him. And my guess is that it's silent because there's probably not a whole lot to report, given that we are winning and they don't need to push him back to maintain a record. I think that when they evaluate that knee and that time frame, they're saying, hey, there's no real benefit to try and catch the front end of that window, because if he does swell, then suddenly we're waiting, we're tacking extra weeks on at the end of that. Where instead, if you just wait to the back end of that time frame that we know by like analyzing large numbers of sports players that have had this injury over time, you say, hey, if you wait till about that 9-month mark, assuredly he should be ready. Like that gives him the best chance to be ready. But if you start creeping beyond that, because you'll see people say like, why even bring him back at all this year? It's like, well, if you let him lose all his conditioning, then it's just going to take way longer. Like there's no
Right.
benefit to going 10, 11, 12 months. Like he's not going to be more healed or more ready. It will actually bring him further away from getting back on the court. So my guess is that they've looked at that 9-month window and they've seen how well the team is doing, and they're saying, hey, I would bet that they have a timeline set out already, unless there has been some setback that we don't understand, because it's always possible that he could have tweaked it in the weight room or jumping or something like that, and he could have some tenderness, but we don't have any reason to think that that's happened.
So if that's the case, let's just assume that's true. You've heard a lot of talk about, I'm sure you see it on the timeline, that one of our biggest weaknesses is interior defense, right? So, and there probably would have been limits to what Wiseman could even do, even if he came back this year. So do you guys see the team picking up someone before the trade deadline? Do you think they need to pick up someone before the trade deadline? Is there someone they can pick up before the trade deadline or by the trade deadline?
I mean, I would say I would be very surprised if the roster we have today is not the roster we end the season with. Maybe I could see them at some point dropping Chiosa if like someone in the G League is like really impressing them, just to take advantage of having them on the 2-way contract and having that exclusive rights to them. But even that I wouldn't be confident in. You can just look to the past dynasty teams, not saying it's a dynasty team, but it's a contending team. The Warriors don't make moves midseason. They don't make trades. They don't even really make signings. They don't have roster space to even make signings. Like Gary Payton and Damian Lee, that's your 2 partially guaranteed guys. Neither of them are getting cut, especially not GB2. Mm-hmm. I know Lee's struggling, but they still value him. He's not going anywhere. So there just isn't room to do anything really. And trade-wise, like Looney is your tradable salary. Everyone else is pretty much close to minimum level. You know what I mean, right? I mean, and
Looney's not going nowhere.
I mean, he's not. I'm just saying that the movable salary, that's what you have. Everyone else is close to minimum level, other than the rookies. But they're not moving the rookies for anyone that's not like a top 15 guy, and no top 15 guy is going to be available mid-season. So I don't see anything happening, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the squad. So with that in mind, how much of a weakness do you think the interior defense is?
I think it's as much of a weakness as you don't play Draymond. Because I mean, yes, you don't have size, but like Draymond is Draymond. Like you put him at the 5, he will lock up anyone. It don't matter. So like, yeah, I mean, when you play, regular season games against like Gobert with Looney starting, I love Looney, but he's not gonna out rebound Gobert most of the time. But I mean, in crunch time, you're playing Draymond, and like he's gonna get shit done. So like, I understand the concern. I do think but I would say it's a regular season concern, because I mean, in the playoffs when it matters, like Draymond's playing at the 5, and like he's undersized, but he'll do it.
I have some concerns contrary to that, the opposite. I feel like game to game in the regular season, it's less likely that we get exposed for having like a softer compared. I mean, keep in mind we're the number 1 defense in the league, right? So like we're having a conversation about how we might have defensive problems, which is kind of a funny thing to discuss. So like, let's take a second to just acknowledge the Warriors are the best defensive team in basketball.
Right.
Like because of Draymond Green, right? Like he's the DPOY. I think that game to game, it's not going to be a problem. Where I think we run into trouble is if we end up banging against Gobert in a 7 series, like in the second round of the playoffs or whatever. Like that's going to be physically taxing over time. And I think that's where we run into problems. But then if we discuss like, what does a trade look like? Who are we realistically, not even discussing salary or who we dump, like who's out there that we could bring in that is going to be able to contend with Gobert over time. And even when we discuss like Perks, you were talking like G League, like theoretically, let's say we have an injury or we're on a shortage of big men. Is Jordan Bell 2-way eligible still? Like, could we do that?
No.
Okay. So like he can't even really come up. We'd have to let someone go. Like, but someone like that, for example, like, is he going to come in and give you valuable minutes against Rudy Gobert? Like he's a vertical risk, but the answer is no.
You telling me Salam Awogbe is not swatting it, dude?
he's injured right now. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. But no, my boy is going to get snapped in half by Rudy Gobert is what's going to happen. Salam, I apologize if you listen to this, but it is what it is. I think that we roll with what we have. I mean, we hear about this, right? Like the Warriors, they'll pick up the phone if someone calls, right? But I don't think they're out looking for that. And I think that whatever it would, like, even if you looked at like a trade calculator that showed a reasonable swap out, Lacob's not going to go for that. It would have to be something like really imbalanced to make him feel like, oh, okay, hey, that's too hard to say no to.
They don't make marginal moves too, is a thing. Like, what if you can, I don't know, not talking salary wise, but theoretically someone, I don't know, just like that young, he could be useful. Like, what if he's available and you can get him? Like, that's a marginal move. Warriors aren't going to do that. Like, they want a big swing, right? They want a top 10 player if they can get one. And I mean, I don't think you can get one right now, but if someone comes available, they'll go for that. But they're not going to do a mid-season, like, oh, this move helps us a little bit, like trade wise, at least. Like,
well, the big buzz was the Pacers, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right. Miles Turner.
Yeah, Miles Turner, or even Sabonis. Like, what do you two make of that? Like, what would that deal look like? And is that something that should be considered if the phone gets picked up and that offer gets made to Golden State? Like, what does it look like and what do you do about it?
I think I saw more people talking about Miles Turner than I did, Sabonis. And I at least, and I don't know much about how trades work, but I think most people thought you'd have to give Wiseman up for him. Plus, I don't know who they were pairing with him, maybe a Moody and someone else, or a future, draft pick or something like that. I just didn't think that Miles Turner was the kind of player that Lacob would give up, Wiseman for.
Mm-hmm.
I tended to think that it would be a marginal improvement as well to the defense. I mean, I know people said that he's a switchable big and, it's going to make the defense better, which I my response to that was like, but we're the number one defense and it's already a historic defense. But people were like, it'll be even better. You're not dealing with Looney. You know, so I mean, I heard all the pros. I may not be articulating all of them correctly, but I still wasn't really that moved by it. I think the idea too was that he could also help the offense some. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't totally really moved by the idea of going after him. I mean, I think the way that I look at it is that the rookies, and I still consider Wiseman a rookie for most purposes. So the rookies to me are taking up roster spots that you don't normally use anyway. Like no one cares about the 14th and 15th roster spot, right? And so in theory, like no championship team, you're not worried about that. Even if you have guys, they're usually riding the bench or just chilling. So we're taking them to develop lottery picks. That's a luxury to me, you know? So I don't have a problem with the fact that like that spot isn't being used on a player, but you know, not everyone saw it like that. So that those were my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And I would just say in general, I think maybe fans don't necessarily realize how the Warriors, like how much they value like Wiseman and Kuminga and Moody. Like they're not moving those guys for someone like Turner or Sabonis. It's not even moving one of those guys for like that level of a player because
I think
they
people
like
realize that. I think some people think that you know, Lacob is a little crazy. And some people think some of it too is just the fact that like he has a point to prove, right? Because they invested in him. They don't want to look stupid. You had all the mellow talk, LaMelo. So, and then there's also the people who just subscribe to the theory of like Steph is here, you go all in right now, and Wiseman is not going to be able to contribute and help for several more years, and the timeline and the, you know, and I think like that to an extent. I just don't feel like we need 1 through 15 roster spots used. Like our team right now goes what, about 12 deep? 12, 13 deep. Like, and you're not going to be going that deep in the playoffs, right? But I mean, for the regular season, we go that deep. And so I don't really see the big deal. But again, you know, everyone has different perspectives on this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, it's like as fans, we love to speculate about roster movement and how like to optimize our chances to win a title. And there was so much talk in the offseason about, you know, they got to get buy-in from Steph, Clay, and Draymond. Those guys are sitting at the table discussing this. You got to maximize that window. But it almost feels moot to talk about it because all of the body language that we've seen from those guys is that moving James Wiseman is the furthest thing from their mind. Like when we lost the plan, Steph's walking out in the parking lot wearing a James Wiseman jersey under his jacket. And it's like, you don't do that for a guy that you're like kind of seething and wanting to ship out to like go get a piece that you're not even sure of. And the same, like Clay's like mentoring him or like reading books with him and stuff
And
like that. And like,
Andre as well.
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like we can talk about it, but we should do so acknowledging that we're not seeing anything at all that suggests that they're sniffing for that. Like,
right. That was the same thing I used to also say about Andrew Wiggins. I'm like, you guys want him traded, but like they seem to like him. You know, Dre
yeah, for
does,
sure.
Steph does. Like they're really into two-way Wigs. So,
For sure.
you know,
That's a really interesting thing to talk about too, because there's been a lot of chatter about Wiggs being like kind of a loser contract. And I mean, the dude's playing the best basketball of his career. So like
I
you
know
look
he's
back
like a
in
borderline
time,
all-star.
exactly. I think he's got like he should be an all-star. I'm gonna push that agenda on Twitter for
Anthony
sure.
Davis, did you see Anthony Davis is going to be out for 4 weeks now?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's a, you know, front court player that's now out.
Yep.
He really has a chance, I think.
So think
Or he
back to when
should.
Wiggins got that contract in Mini and like, what did they expect from him? Did they pay him that amount of money hoping that he would become someone that was statistically leaps and bounds better than he was on the day when they offered him that? Or because if the answer to that is no, and they offered him that for them thinking that he was who he was, he's now way better than that statistically. So like, at what point do we stop saying Wiggins' contract sucks? Like, no, he's worth a 30 million. Like, or I don't know, Perks, what's that number? Pull it up for me.
Yeah, I mean,
you got it.
I think people have toned down because he's been playing better. But the way that I always thought, I was like, look, he's a 20-point scorer in the NBA. He's a wing. He can defend. Like, I don't think he's that overpriced. Like, I don't think you're getting people who can do what he does for that much cheaper, in my opinion.
Not
and
for
now
what we're
he's
seeing
more
right
efficient.
now. He's shooting the 3 ball at a 42% clip. Like, that's unreal. Like, that's higher than Steph, right?
Gravity of Steph. The gravity of Steph.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
I mean, but he said the other day, he said, I've never been more open in my career than I have now, which I think is a remarkable statement to be made. So look, I'm happy for Wiggs. I'm a big fan of him. You know, people tease me on the TL. You may not know, but people do, because I'm always like, Wiggins, my
That's
baby Wiggins, Andrew, you know. So I'm always cheering him on. And I'm happy. I'm happy that, because he looks happy. He's smiling on the court. You're seeing all of this, you know, body language from him that, you know, I don't like to really read too much into the Timberwolves days, but I mean, a lot of things people used to say about him is he doesn't look interested, body language. You can't say any of that about him on this squad. He looks excited. He wants to win. He's, you know, delaying his child's birth to play. I mean, I don't know what more you could ask for in a player. Wherever you land on the whole vaccination thing, he put aside his personal views and took the vaccine for the betterment of the team. So, you know, I feel like he's been a great addition to this team, and I'm happy. Personally,
I'm super happy with how Wiggins is playing.
Me too.
And this comment that he's never been more open in his life, it's not going to be like it is now forever, because it's going to be even more open in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Like, are we going to see this dude shoot 45% from 3? Like, is he going to improve, or are we going to see a regression? He's just going to
slash his way to like 25 points. I don't know. Like, it's going to be pretty remarkable. It's going to be wide open for him out there.
That's the thing that's been most impressive to me about Wiggins's game that has transformed over time, is his consciously bodying dudes inside. Like, in Minnesota, he did not play like that. Like, it almost seemed like he like tended to avoid contact, but now it's like his go-to. They're running a ton of plays that like have him cutting inside, bodying into someone, and coming up for like a little jumper. And he seems really comfortable doing that. And it's like there's been chatter this year about like where are we creating our offensive scoring, especially inside, like who's shooting mid-range, who's shooting inside, and Wiggins, I think, is the answer to that. And Poole, right? We saw that like point per possession. Like, when Poole, what is it when Poole dribbles the ball more than 7 times? He's like statistically the most likely to make a shot.
Is that really?
It, Perks?
It's been a couple games, but it was around like 72%.
Yeah,
I can pull up the stat.
So it's like essentially like,
that's fascinating. So what?
When Poole's creating his own offense, like when he takes the ball and decides that he's gonna like dribble to make his own space, he's converting into buckets like at a higher percentage rate than anyone else on the team. So I kind of attribute that to that quick first step, that lateral step he's got. He does kind of like fake left, and then he springs really far right, and he creates so much distance between him and his defender, and he's coming downhill really fast. It's really impressive, his handle and the way that he does that.
Amazing. Oh, I love that. I love Poole. I love that we have our little pool party slogan for him. I love it. I love the squad. And did you see that interview that Draymond just did with Doris Burke? Or I shouldn't say just did, but they just like aired it, where he's breaking down a bunch of different defensive possessions. Did you guys see that?
I did see that.
It's really cool. And like, you know, at the end, like she kind of asked him a question about, you know, do you think this team has what it takes to contend? And he's like, he gets so excited like a little kid, and he's just like, you know, Doris, I really think that we do. You know, he's like, I think
he's like, you better believe it
at the end of the year. And it was just so great to see. Perks, you should definitely check it out. It's It's a really, really good clip. And it's just like you see his defensive IQ on display. It was just a great thing to watch. He was just breaking down these plays, and Doris looked like a kid in a candy shop just listening to him. It was great stuff. He's really born to do this. And of course, aside from basketball. And so once his career is done, it's going to be great to see him up there doing this kind of work. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Let's talk a little bit about these games. Actually, before we do, just, I want, we're coming off like a high week. Steph finally broke that 3-point record. How was that for you guys watching that? Because I actually attended the game. I was in person, and it was amazing. But I kind of wonder what it was like for people watching, because it's one of the few times like me being on the East Coast benefited me, and I got to go in and see it happen. It was emotional for me. I don't know if I saw lots of fans saying they teared up or got choked up or just really happy, but what was it like for you guys watching that?
Do you want to go first, Bear?
Yeah, you go for it, Berks.
I think it was just such a testament to like everything Steph has done in his career, like to reach like that amount of threes. Like I've been watching him since he's been in the league, and like to think everything he's gone through, but like not just where the organization used to be and all the injuries, but like I don't know, I think it's just so special that Steph is who he is and like what he's achieved. And I think as a fan, like it's just incredible that we get to be a part of it, especially with you being at the game. Like, I mean, I love that, like after the 3, they, took the foul and there was a timeout, and like him and Draymond shared like this like moment. And then he just like went up to every teammate and like hugged them or like, shook hands with them, and then had the moment with like Ray Allen. Like just the whole kind of, I don't want to say spectacle. I feel like that gives a negative connotation, but just like the whole, I don't know, like atmosphere, I think, especially considering it wasn't even at a home game. So
it was
shout
electric.
out to Knicks fans, for, and
it's
the Warriors
like
fans
they just paused everything as
the
they should have.
The whole arena erupted.
Yeah,
it was
like a
amazing.
moment bigger than basketball, or like more meaningful than just the game, right? It was like it brought in every moment of training. And like when that Under Armour commercial played up, like with the footage of him as a little kid, like hooping on his little like Fisher Price hoop or whatever, it's just like, man, this guy has been working his ass off his whole life for it. And so to see that the league gave him his due respect, it was really cool. I was watching it at home with my kids. I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And my son, the 5-year-old, he like doesn't understand all the rules of basketball yet. And we're kind of doing a soft introduction. Like he'll come sit on my lap when I got the game on. And he's learning little things. Like he'll look at the 3-point line. He's like, so if they shoot behind the rainbow, that's 3 points, right? Like it's like he's starting to figure it out. And he's like, and Steph Curry shoots it from behind the rainbow better than anyone. So he's got a Curry jersey.
I love that.
And some shorts that are like 2 years too big for him. And he like wears his hat, and he's like he just like walks around in his fit like at home like every day, like pretending he's a Warrior. So it's cool. It's meaningful to me for sure. I watched Warriors games with my dad growing up, and now my son is doing it with me. And Steph Curry is the greatest player to ever don a Warriors jersey. I don't get too caught up in it, but it's meaningful. It means something for sure. It's important that he's and it helps that he's like seemingly a great human being too. Like he's not just a great basketball player, he's a great person. So we're really lucky as Warriors fans to be cheering for Steph Curry. That's how I feel about it.
So
I just wish Clay was there.
I know,
for sure.
I know, especially because he had a Rolex for Clay too. He gave the Rolexes to Dre and Dre, but he had one for Clay. I'm sure it was hard for Clay not being there. So
for sure.
Can't wait to have him back. Do you guys think, there was a lot of talk because Steph has been slumping a little bit. There was a lot of talk that it was the the chasing of the record and it being in his head that was affecting him. There was also some speculation from others that it might be the rotation. And in the Boston game, Kerr seemed to go back to the old rotation. Steph had a great first half, not a second. So, he still has to like put it all together in a game. Or it could just be a slump because he has those from time to time. I think human nature makes us want to assign blame to something that can't always be explained, or it could be a little of all of those things, right? I don't know. But what do you think? Do you think the new rotation is back? Do you think now that the record is over?
I subscribe to both of those theories that
Which
you
one?
brought up just now, that like chasing the record, I think played a role to some degree. I don't think it changed who he is like moving forward as a basketball player, but I think for a little stretch there was additional pressure for him to be chucking to try and pull that record. And it was probably unrealistic to think he was going to drop 16 threes. I mean, like I would have never bet against it.
Game. I thought that was the only game that it was really excessive, though. I didn't really think it was out of hand in any other game. And I think it was because he wanted to do it at home for the fans, which I understand.
For sure. And it's like I wouldn't have bet against it because like he's done like he's dropped what, like 11 like several times without trying to do that. Like,
right.
I mean, obviously he tries to make every shot he takes, but like I don't think he's ever walked onto a court and been like, I'm going for the record tonight. And so to see that he was maybe doing that intentionally, I was like, I'm not going to be shocked if this fool does this right now. Like I tuned in for sure. I cleared my schedule. I mean, I'm trying to watch all the games anyway, but for that whole day, I was walking around buzzing like this could happen. Like it felt like a playoff game, like walking into it. And then I do think that the rotation is tricky because I do think there's a chance it's stopping him from finding his offensive momentum. But it's also hard to argue with when you're winning every damn game. That like it's hard to criticize Steve Kerr. Maybe we would be winning by more.
Oh, not for me. I criticize him all the time.
Yeah,
but it is a little harder when you're getting results, right? Like you're like, well, how strongly can I lean on this when we're still winning? Like,
no, not for me. I mean, but I like, I'm not someone who's just like a results oriented person. I'm also not all the way processed either. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think even when you're getting positive results, you have to always look at the process to get there. So I knew that like it was going to stay for a while because they were winning, but I just saw how unhappy Steph was with it. He did not like it. And I'm just like, there's no way your star player, your best player can be this upset about something that's going to last forever. So I don't know if it's permanently gone now. I thought like maybe it would go away once Clay came back, but Boston came and they seem to go back to it. So what do you two think? Do you think the old rotation's back, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I feel like maybe Poole's absence was the reasoning for it.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, I don't know necessarily why, but I mean, it's with the Boston game they did that, and that was the first game Poole missed. So maybe Steve wanted, Steph to find more of a rhythm, because you're missing a like dynamic creator like Poole to like check in for him and kind of, because I mean, Poole kind of, not to say he kind of does the Steph role when Steph's not there.
Right.
He plays a bit off ball and on ball. So like without him, you're missing that aspect. Mm-hmm. So maybe that was the reasoning behind it.
That's a really excellent point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
That's actually the first thing that came to my mind too. Like when the rotation adjusted, I was like, oh, this is in response to not having Jordan Poole on the court. That they're going back to what's worked strongly in the past. And, you need offensive firepower at certain times. And with Poole not in the game, and if Steph's sitting, you just don't have it. I mean, that's something we've really struggled with, right? Like, where do we find buckets when those guys aren't playing?
It was interesting though that like the second unit played pretty well in Boston, at least in that second quarter. And I don't think it was because of their offense. It's because they were so locked in defensively.
Yeah,
that, like they were just getting stops.
Yeah, I remember I like tweeted out some shit when that was happening. I was like, I don't like this lineup, and then I was kind of like, but they're like +2 over 4 minutes. So like, I mean, as much as I would love for them to make some substitutions here, I was like, there's really no reason to at all. Cause like they're not even just treading water. They're kind of taking up some ground too. So I guess maybe it's like not the most exciting minutes of basketball to watch, but you're like, that's exactly what you want from the bench. Like, come in 2 minutes and you walk up like with a positive after 5 of rest. It's like, all right, it's kind of
better than last season when we would dread the second unit coming in.
oh my
Like
god, yeah. You're like, I hope we built up
the
a buffer.
timeline would tweet about it, like, oh no, the second unit's coming in. Oh no, the lead's gonna vanish.
Yeah, exactly. My biggest criticism, outside of the obvious, like Steph's not finding his momentum, is I think that it does create situations where a timeout or a foul doesn't come and Steph gets stuck at the scorer's table. And suddenly, like, he's coming in with 4 minutes left in the fourth, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, that's a problem.
For years, though. Like,
yeah,
that's been a long time issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest issue with the new rotation, like I like the concept of Steph starting and ending quarters. I do. I'm not actually that concerned about the second quarter, to be honest with you, but I definitely like him playing more minutes in the fourth. It's just there will literally be times where like he hits a 3 or 2 threes, and then it's like, oh, all right, time to check you out, Steph.
For sure,
like,
for sure.
And
it feels very rigid.
Right, it's so rigid, which is a Steve Kerr thing, and it felt really choppy. Like he is just like hitting a rhythm. He's gonna break this open. Why are you doing this? You know, I had the fortune of going to the Philly game, the New York game, and the Boston game. And in Philly, you know, in that third quarter, they were up 13 and it was going great. And the moment he sat Steph, like that was it, lead blown. And then Philly was like all in their, you know, their rhythm. And then they just kind of couldn't get anything going in the fourth, the Dubs. And so I really thought like if he hadn't sat Steph, they may have like broken that game open and, you know, there wouldn't have been any coming back for Philly. So that's an example of a time that I thought like being that rigid about, you know, the new rotation was a problem, but you know, whatever. At the end of the day, they are winning. I didn't love that they forfeited the Raptors game. Essentially, I know
they just punted it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people felt like they really needed rest. I was more so of the concern that like once Jordan got COVID, that the cycle was coming to the team. And so I kind of felt like they're not ruled out yet. Play while you're healthy because the rest is going to come anyway, because you guys are going to end up being out for COVID protocols. So I would have preferred that they didn't punt the game, but whatever they did. There were some good takeaways from that though, right? Like, I mean, Kuminga played good. They didn't lose the game by 50 like last year. They still scored 100 points, which I think for them to be missing so many offensive people, they did that. So there were definitely some positives, a lot of turnovers though. Those were not great. Were there any takeaways you guys had from the Raptors game?
I mean, I would say my one criticism was that they didn't punt it all the way. Like, I feel like you should have just used it as a development game as soon as you sat everyone. Like, Moody played 25 minutes. I think he should have played at least 35
like
and
32
started.
34.
I mean, Jeff Dowden played 18 minutes. Could have given him 30 as well. Like, just play all the rookies. Let them get reps. Like, you're not winning anyway. You might as well do that. So I don't like that I mean, I don't mind that Juan started, but like, just start the rookies and let them cook. Like, you're gonna lose anyway. Might as well get them the reps. So like,
should Kuminga be getting more minutes than Juan?
I think it should be feel-based, which I know Kerr doesn't love doing, but I feel like if JTA is not playing well, try Kuminga. Kuminga's not playing well, go to JTA. Like, I know they prefer a more like rigid structure to the rotation, but I think they could benefit at least in like the lower levels of the rotation from being a bit more flexible and like playing the hot hand. And I feel like they actually did that at the beginning of the season and have kind of like gone away from that recently. So I like them to return to playing.
I'm going to say the answer to that question is yes. And I'm going to preface that by saying I feel kind of bad about it because I like JTA a lot. And I feel bad. I feel bad that there's not enough minutes available to get him in the game as much. And that's just the reality of it. And he knows that too, right? But when you think about his game versus Kuminga's game, it's kind of like you think about the reasons why you might not want them on the floor. And they kind of have similar problems in that they're both turnover prone. Like, and And so it's not like you play JTA instead of Kuminga and you're less likely to turn the ball over. It's probably going to happen in either situation.
I mean, Juan is more of a veteran. He's less likely to have like high turnover games. Like he's had a couple where it's been an issue, but I feel like especially Kerr would be more confident putting Juan out there and putting the ball in his hands.
I
than
agree.
Kuminga. Like one of Kuminga's big things is like he's a great playmaker. He has great court vision, but there will be turnovers. Like he'll make the wrong reads or force something.
Seems
I feel
like
in
he
those
fits right in then on this team.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Right.
But I think in those cases it makes sense. Now that's why I think it should be more field based. Like give Kuminga a chance. If he's locked in defensively, if he's taking advantage, of his athleticism on the offensive end, driving in and getting buckets, then keep him in. If he's turning the ball over and taking bad shots, then you pull him and you put Juan in, and just whoever play the hot hand, whoever's
So he's just been really good, and I'm not someone who knows much about like draft and who you should pick, and I let people far smarter than me say like what's right, but I just remember people being like really upset about Kuminga and just knowing like the Warriors were going to pick him and feeling like, oh, of course they're going to pick him and they shouldn't. And I feel like this guy is really good. It feels like people had it wrong about him, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you?
I was a Kuminga truther. Like Perks will remember, I was blowing up the chat. I was doing backflips when he fell to that 7 spot. Like I couldn't believe it. I don't know, just his raw potential, and he can just create. Like the guy like can impose himself against opponents, and he's like, I'm gonna get a bucket. Like you're gonna have to foul me,
right?
And he's just so strong and hungry. He's just got a different mindset, man. When he fell to 7, I don't know what was a bigger shock, that he fell to 7 or that Moses fell to 14. I don't know.
Moody to 14 for me. I think
we walked out like
I wanted Moody at 7.
In my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of
taken
people
Moody
did.
over Kuminga.
No, I'm fully of the opinion that you try to go best player available in the draft, and at the 7th pick, like I know Kuminga's raw, and like that was one of the knocks on him coming into the draft was like, can this guy give you minutes in his first year? Probably not. Like he needs G League minutes, which I mean I feel like he's kind of shown that he can still do some stuff on an NBA court like right now. But
for sure,
even regardless of that, like he was the best prospect at the 7th pick. Like if you don't trade that pick, you take him. Like you don't take a lesser player, in my opinion.
Yeah.
At least.
I remember when 6th pick went out and they didn't grab him, I immediately felt like that the pick is Kuminga. It has to be. Like you just can't leave him there. You can't let him slide. It's like you couldn't not take him. It seemed so obvious, and I was hyped up. I was like, this guy is going to be a great player at some point. But it made me question more what's going to be there at 14. Because then there was an additional like pressure to be like, we need to find someone who we can get more solid NBA minutes this season. Like we need a more impact player in the now. But then Moses like fell to us anyway, so it felt like
just Moses hasn't been able to like. I mean, I know he's done well in some of the G League games. He hasn't seemed to yet been able to like really get it going, and it's probably because he's not getting consistent minutes. But I know he can shoot. I would just like to, see him get it going in a game or two, and maybe he'll have the chance, because I definitely think that, unfortunately, I don't want it. And again, I'm very big on not putting things into the universe you don't want, but I am nervous that we will have more players going into protocols. So I'm sure the rookies are going to get more minutes in the coming games. So the coming games, we do have to talk about that. What do you guys think? I mean, I think with the Kings being depleted, we are too, but you have Steph and Dre. I think, they can still pull out a W in that game. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, none of us know for sure, but what do you guys think?
I think they can get a win.
Yeah, I mean,
I plan on them getting a win. I mean, does anyone plan on not big stepping at the end of the next game?
I mean, I
love that video
with the remix too.
For sure. Yeah, look for that, Nat. We got Stunnaman kicked us a little preview.
Oh
of
yeah, I'm looking
Dub's
forward to
version of Big Steppin', which is pretty fire, truthfully.
that. Okay, so
You
I
kill that shit.
mean, we still think they should hopefully be able to beat the Kings.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the Kings
Despite
are more undermanned than we are. Like they're.
Yep.
I would have to double check what the injury report's gonna be, but I would expect them to not have Fox or Mitchell, and that's like two big losses for them.
right.
So
Okay, but now what about the Grizzlies? Because they got Ja coming back, and the team actually seemed to be playing really well without Ja. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, Ja is hurting the team or anything like that. But I'm just saying, and also the first time we played them, Delon Brooks wasn't he was hurt. He's back too, right? So he's back in the rotation. I'm pretty sure, maybe I'm wrong, but I think they're gonna have Ja back, if I'm not mistaken. Because he tweeted something like, when I get back on, I forget what day he said. So I thought it was before that game. So, but even without Ja, they've been playing really well. So if the team is as is, because we don't know if there's going to be more protocol announcements before that game, but as is, missing Poole and missing Andrew, how do you guys feel about us going into that game versus the Grizzlies?
I mean, I think it's gonna be a tough game. I haven't really watched the Grizzlies lately. I know they've been playing well, but I mean, if Ja's back, he's been a Warriors killer like the last two seasons. Him and like Terry Rozier have like just massacred them every time we play. So that and the fact that Brooks, I think I would have to look at the numbers, but I feel like he's not held, but like he's defended Steph pretty well in their matchups. I think it's gonna be a very tough game.
He's gotten away with a lot of shit, but yeah, I hear
True.
you.
That is true. Brooks does like to poke the bear.
The thing about Ja is like I don't really fear him like going off, but like in the first game of the season, we were up by so much and just let them come back in the game. It was a lot of carelessness on the Warriors' part. I mean, they're gonna definitely have to play a smarter game, but they're missing a lot of offense. I mean, the good thing I suppose are these games are at home, so role players may feed off of that energy a little bit. But where are they gonna get offense from? Or they're going to have to really rely on their defense, right? I mean, for those games.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be defense first. Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be a defense first game because, like, you're missing Wiggins, you're missing Poole. Like, Steph will give you offense, but no one else can really, like, create that much. Belly can do it a little bit.
And Andrew's one of our best defenders.
Yeah, that too. But I think they're going to lean on their defense, and I feel like I wouldn't mind seeing Kuminga get some minutes as well, like some decent minutes, because I feel like he can give you some offense, right? He's athletic, he can get inside, so I wouldn't mind that, and plus he'll get some stuff done defensively as well. So it's going to be dependent on Steph, like going off, and hopefully the role players can play their part. But yeah, I would expect them to really lean on their defense.
Do you think we can win that game? What do you think?
The Memphis game. I mean,
we're rolling right now.
I would like us to, but I don't know. I think one of our tougher matchups coming up is that one. And then
obviously if Clay was still here, you'd feel a little bit more comfortable, but without him, that's a tall task, right? What do you think, Mads?
Memphis shows up against the Warriors.
Yeah,
is the reality, and Dylan Brooks specifically has played really well in the playing game.
I can't stand him.
And John always gets like timely buckets, so like he might not go off, but like he's been super clutch, especially the playing game. Like just kill them. So
yeah, for sure, it's gonna be a tough game. I feel like I'm less worried about like Steven Adams does not strike fear in my heart. Like I don't think I don't know. They're a good team and they're rolling, and so
do they defend the three row?
I think they'll close out on Steph. I think they won't make it easy for him.
But I mean, like if it's a game where like Otto and Belly have it going, for example, are they?
Well, that's tough because if Otto and Belly have it going, we're gonna beat any team in the league, right? Like that's how I feel. Is that a bad take? I feel like if those two dudes are stroking it, we're gonna win. Like
some teams don't defend the 3-point line well, so Where are they right now ranked offensively and defensively?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know
And
the answer to that.
that's okay.
Perks might be able to pull that. But
I'll look it up and say.
I know
Thank
that
you. And I want to
I
know
do
how
think
they
that-
are. How are they rebounding as well?
I do think that Ja is going to be back. I expect that.
I
And I
really
would
hope
expect that he's going to want to play in that game.
Of course, but maybe he won't have his flow and rhythm right away because he's missed some games. And I mean, even though obviously it's his team, the team has been playing a certain way well without him. So there's still that level of like maybe a game or two to like reintegrate him back in. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off that knee, right? Like he was supposed to have like a 2-week recovery timeline or rest period at the end of November. I think it was like the 26th. So I would expect that that he should be back, but yeah, I don't know. And he's probably bought a little additional recovery time because he's in health and safety protocols. So whether that hurts his conditioning overall or if it just like gives him extra time to be game ready, I'm not sure.
So Memphis is first in rebounding in the league. They're tied with the Bucks. They're also 5th offensive rating and 16th defensive rating.
Okay, so they're not great defensively. That's a good thing for us.
I'm surprised that they're rebounding so well. That's surprising to me.
Why?
I don't know. I just I wouldn't have put it on my radar that they were gonna like be problematic on the interior.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we still have a little bit more to talk about, but I'm gonna stop this first part of the episode, and then we'll start talking some other things. But thank you guys for joining me so far. We're gonna keep it going, but I hope my listeners have enjoyed this episode before. As you see, Perks and Meds brings a wealth of knowledge to the show. I'm enjoying this conversation so much. So definitely stay tuned or tune in for part 2 of this episode, but subscribe to the show. It's available on YouTube. Follow on any streaming platform, Apple Pods, Spotify, wherever you listen to pods, it's available. Rate the show with 5 stars only. If you have other commentary, you can just DM me with that or hit me. But hopefully you're enjoying this and we have more coming out for you. All right, guys, until the next episode, take care.